want to thank everyone for showing up in the storm. And I'd like to just recognize a few people, and then I'm going to pray, and I will turn it over to Lynn. And if you have any thing to say, I will be carrying the mic to you, like Family Feud. So we have Megan Cook is here, president of our town council, Ron Eagle, council member, and Al Silverstein. And all of them showed up for me. I'm Reverend Davis, Ward 4. They showed up to make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do. So I'm grateful for that. A little bit of jealousy already. Let us pray. Eternal God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for our dialogue and discussion, and we ask that you meet us here, oh God, even in the midst of the storm, to be a blessing unto us. We thank you in advance, God, for what you can do, will do, and going to do. Bless us now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Turn it over to Lynn. Get the phone.
Thank you, Reverend Davis, and welcome everybody. I'm Lynn Thomas. I'm the town planner, for those who don't know me. From our planning commission tonight, we, I guess they're all wimps, because the only one that showed up is our chairman, Mr. Weber. So Paul Weber, planning commission chairman, is going to give some introductory remarks, and then I have a probably not as brief as I'd like, but relatively brief PowerPoint to go through that just gives some background on what the comprehensive plan is and presents some preliminary results of the 2 surveys that we have posted currently to give you a little context before we enter into a relatively informal dialogue that Mr. Weber will be with you folks.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out. I recognize that the weather is not the best, although we need the rain. So we're going to keep this as short as possible and make it informal tonight. You've probably heard a fair bit about the comprehensive plan. And I just want to tell you from my perspective as planning commission member, there's 2 reasons why I think the plan is an important controlling document for the town of Easton. So one is that any project, any development project that comes before the town that's reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission or by the town council, we want to make certain that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan is our vision for the future growth and development in the town of Easton for the next 10 years. And it's a community-led plan. So we want to make certain that over that 10-year period, that any project, any new development in the town of Easton comports with that plan. The second reason why it's important is that it serves as the Bible. So anytime we have to prepare or revise any other planning implementation tool, and I'll use as an example the recent zoning regulations that we just revised, we go back and we look at the comprehensive plan because the zoning codes are what implement that plan. And one example is, we know that the comprehensive plan, at least the last one, talked about the need for more affordable housing. And I would venture to say our new plan will probably echo that goal. So when we went and revised the zoning codes, we wanted to make sure that the zoning codes allowed for more dense development and also allowed for a smorgasbord of new housing types that would encourage multiple family dwellings, thereby reduce the cost, making it more affordable whether you're going to buy or whether you're going to rent. What makes this comprehensive plan different? Unlike all the other planning tools that we work on, this is one where nothing has been written yet. And there's an important reason for that the comprehensive plan is supposed to express the wishes of the community. So it's our combined vision for the future. So it's not something that's done behind closed doors by town staff and planning commission staff. This is a document where we go out and listen to what the people in the community say, your ideas, your notions, your vision for the town of Easton for the next 10 years. And once we gather that information, we then sit down and we write a draft plan. So in keeping with that premise, we've held a number of meetings already. First, we met with all the major stakeholder groups, all the major community organizations in the town of Easton. We've gathered information from them. We've also met with the professional development community, people who, land use planners, land use engineers, anybody who's involved in development projects, we've heard from them. We've now taken the show on the road. This is the last of all 4 election wards we've been to. We plan to hold a town hall meeting, and we also have 2 surveys which are online. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have taken those 2 surveys? Wow, good. Okay, I would encourage you to reach out to your family, your friends, your neighbors. We have around 650 people in the town of Easton that have taken those surveys, but we have 17,101 residents. So we're short of what I consider to be a truly representative sample. So please encourage as many people as possible to take those surveys. So what we're going to do tonight, Lynn is going to go through the results of those surveys and tell you what your neighbors are saying about growth and development. So you get a sense of where people are concerning some critical growth issues. Once he's done sharing those results, we're going to ask your viewpoints. So you think these people are on target? Do you have a different view? And just as importantly, is there something that we're missing? Is there some other critical issue that we need to think about for the next 10-year period? So again, we're going to keep it informal and we'll try to keep it as brief as possible because we want to hear from you. Lynn?
Thank you, Paul. This is easier now that I'm not competing with the brain. In the event that you're not familiar with Ward 4, here is a map of Ward 4. A little bit unique in Easton in that it is entirely encompassed in the what I would call the traditionally already developed or built out portion of town. It's pretty much confined by Route 50 and the Parkway, extending over the Parkway just in this one location here. So just very briefly, discussion of what a comprehensive plan is. I recognize many of you folks, and maybe I'm a Ward 4 resident at heart or something, because I feel like it's a higher percentage of folks that I recognize from my experience through the years. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have a good sense of what a comprehensive plan is. But just to highlight, I've highlighted some of the words that are often associated with a comprehensive plan. So it's a long-range guide. It is very future-focused. It contains a lot of goals, objectives, and policies on a number of growth issues and growth-related issues and topics. It is vision-oriented, and it's a lot of things, but it is primarily a land use document. Of course, that touches a number of things: transportation, housing, etc. So that's why we get into a lot more things. But at its heart, a comprehensive plan is a land use plan. I think it's equally important to understand what a comprehensive plan is not. So it is not law. It is visionary, aspirational, contains those goals and objectives and things, but it doesn't have the thou shalt and thou shalt not kind of statements. That those are found in things like the zoning code, the subdivision regulations, that, as Mr. Weber described, they need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. They are influenced by the comprehensive plan, but the plan itself is not law. It's not completely inflexible, so it is possible. It is intentionally a lengthy and relatively complicated process, but it is possible to amend the comprehensive plan and not have to wait until we do this again in 10 years. We've done it a handful of times in Easton, not very frequently, but we have done it 3 or 4 times in my 30+ years with the town. Sometimes on our own volition and occasionally at the request of a property owner. It's not, we'd like to think we take into account a lot of factors that we come up with a good plan, but it's not all knowing. I can guarantee as sure as I am of just about anything that something will come up, and probably not long after we adopt the plan, that the plan does not anticipate or consider, and we'll have to make a determination of how to deal with it. That might be amending the plan. It might be that it's not urgent enough that it can wait till the next plan comes up, or we can find some language in the plan that we can make address the situation as we deem appropriate. And it's not a master development plan, meaning it's not it's not like a set of blueprints that you can unroll and know that, oh, at the corner of First and Main, there's going to be a bank, and it's going to be 3 stories, and it's going to be made of brick. No, it's more general than that. It might describe commercial uses as being appropriate at that site. Maybe it speaks a little to specific character defining elements we'd like to see in such buildings, but nothing more specific than that. Again, those kinds of things come in the zoning code to the extent we begin to hone in on specific uses that are proposed. So just briefly, the current plan, the one that we are in the process of updating, there's a lot in it. There's 300 pages in total. It includes 15 chapters, a forward, 2 appendices in 10 maps, and it contains 46 goals and 185 objectives. So despite all that, it can be summarized. At least the overall growth strategy that the plan advances, I think, can be summarized in this slide by these 5 points. It recommends, and this has been part of our plan for a while now, containing sprawl with an urban growth boundary. So essentially, we have drawn a line and said, this is as big as we envision from a geographic extent or a footprint of the town, if you will. This is as big as we envision Easton ever becoming. Yes, that can be adjusted and amended. It has on at least one occasion to account for the site of the new hospital, which was beyond our envisioned boundary at that time, but we thought it important enough to, so that's an example of how you can amend the plan, and we did. But that has been in the plan for, 20 years or so now, at least, and it's very closely coordinated with the county. The county has the same concept for each of its incorporated towns, and our boundary is, to the best of my knowledge, 100% consistent with the county's depiction of that same urban growth boundary. There is a recommendation to increase density so that we make the most efficient use of that land, and we don't find it necessary to unnecessarily expand those boundaries in the future, and to make more efficient use of what we have, and thus slow the point at which we reach build out, essentially. There's discussion about building neighborhoods as opposed to subdivisions or developments. And the distinction there is, at least in my mind, a subdivision or a development is what it says, just a subdivision. It's just housing. It's often very similar housing, not a lot of variety in appearance or type of housing. Whereas a neighborhood has that variety in housing type, in lot sizes, even in uses in some cases. You know, the neighborhoods that people consistently tell us they like tend to be those in and around downtown. And those are characterized by things like there is housing, but there's also a little bit of commercial use. There's cultural uses of any sort. This is again, the fourth point is one that goes back a while in our planning. And it's somewhat unique, I think, in this one, which is improved design, in that we hear it from the folks who respond to the surveys or come to the meetings and indicate that we really should strive to grow even faster, as well as those who say, hey, we need to slow down and limit growth. Everybody seems to regardless of where they are on that spectrum, to be in agreement that whatever growth we do have, it needs to be as nice as it can possibly be and appropriate for Easton. And then one that is a new addition to this growth strategy in the current plan is, for the first time, there is a recommendation to attempt to manage the rate of growth. The target was to aim for 1% annually, recognizing that the 2 or 3 decades prior to that plan, we had tended to average about 3% annually. It really didn't take it more than a couple of generalized statements like that. By chance, the economy kind of bottomed out roughly the same time that this comprehensive plan was adopted. And as a result, we have only grown at 0.75% per year in the life of this current comprehensive plan. The plan can also be summarized largely, I think, by these two maps. The one on the left is a map of growth areas. So this line that is bordered by the thick green line is that urban growth boundary I mentioned. The green area would be out in the county, and it is intentionally a thick green area to designate that we think it's appropriate. Obviously, it's in the county, it's up to the county, but we think it's appropriate to surround our ultimate growth area with farmland, forest land, protected areas. The sort of white or milky color area is the existing town of Easton as of the time that that plan was adopted. And so anything that is yellow, orange, or red represents land that was not in the town at that time, but was envisioned to someday be in the town. And they correspond to a sequence, if you will, of when we envision it being appropriate to come into the town. So the red areas were the most appropriate for consideration of annexation. If you look closely at them, you'll note that they, pretty much all of them, I think all but perhaps one, were already developed just under county rules and regulations. And the comprehensive plan even includes a statement of the fact that, it's likely that most folks that drive through Easton would probably assume that those areas are already part of Easton. The other map is the future land use map. So that suggests what type of land use we would envision on all of the areas, both current town and future town areas. By the show of hands, I could probably skip these two, but just for information or for the recording, if someone is watching who is unfamiliar, this is the homepage of the Town of Easton's webpage. We have a direct link to this comprehensive plan update. So if you click on that, it will take you to this page, which includes these 2 surveys that we've mentioned a couple of times now. They're available. They continue to be available in both English and Spanish. And we envision adding at least a couple more surveys over the next couple of months, each one getting a little more specific or a little related to a specific topic. So I'm not sure exactly which one we will delve into, but it seems likely that transportation issues and housing issues will come up based on what we've heard at these various meetings so far. So next I have some of the results so far. This is updated as of yesterday. So from the first survey, I'm going to have to wander a bit now to read this. So this indicates the town's population for the last census was 17,101. And we asked folks, in your opinion, what do you think about that number? Is it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being too small, 5 being too large? And you see that far and away the most common response was right in the middle, which I would translate as being just about right. Similar question about the rate of growth. Ask people how comfortable they are, what do they feel? Are we growing too slowly, too quickly? Again, the most common response was right in the middle, a little more skewing towards the opinion that it's too quick, but certainly by far the most common response suggested about right. And then the other dimension of growth is the geographic extent. So we asked, what do you think about the amount of land, the footprint, if you will, of the town of Easton? Again, 1 being too little, 5 too much, and the overwhelming response was right in the middle. Then there is a question that notes that however much growth we get in the future, there's 2 ways to accommodate that growth, essentially. We can look for opportunities to develop vacant, underutilized parcels within the already built-up area of town, something called infill development and redevelopment of projects that might be ripe for being rehabbed and redeveloped. Or the other alternative is expanding outwardly on the periphery of town into what are vacant, sometimes called greenfield areas of town. And we asked folks what they thought the percentage split between these 2 options should be. There was a clear preference stated for more growth to be accommodated by infill and redevelopment. And people suggested percentages that ranged from an even 50-50 split all the way up to 80-20 in terms of preferring the infill redevelopment option. I'm not sure there's that many opportunities to get up to the 80-20, but that'll be part of what we look at as we get into more detail. Just, how many opportunities are there for infill and redevelopment projects? Regional scale retail shopping has long been a topic of interest in Easton. So we asked, in your opinion, as of this particular moment in time, the amount of this type of shopping in Easton is, and again, ranging from too little to too much. A little more diversity in answers on this one, but again, the most common answer was right down the middle. Although the second and third certainly were the tending towards that there's too much of this type of shopping. Then we asked a few open-ended questions, one of which was, please list one thing, and we noted it can be a store, restaurant, an employer, recreational entertainment opportunity, and really whatever you felt is missing, that is missing or underrepresented in Easton and that you would like to see added in the next 10 years of the life of the comp plan. And some of the popular responses included, far and away, the most common was Trader Joe's with 41 responses, followed by Whole Foods, a brewery, steakhouse, a Costco, various types of ethnic restaurants, and sometimes just generically stated ethnic restaurants. Sometimes folks would actually suggest, hey, I'd like a Greek restaurant or a Thai restaurant, or you have it, name it. Affordable housing, and a publicly accessible waterfront. So those are some of the highlights from the first survey, and that one currently has, I believe, 550 responses. There's quite a drop off between the first survey and the second. So if you haven't taken both surveys, they are separate and unique surveys. So please revisit the site and take the second one, because it only has a little more than 100 responses so far. But what we've heard from that one, that survey includes questions concerning our current growth strategy,
amenities that attract people to Easton or could attract people to Easton, and the potential redevelopment of the current hospital site if and when the new hospital is constructed. And some of the highlights from this survey include, so we asked people about each of those elements of the growth strategy I described earlier. So, and asked, do they agree or disagree with that strategy as being appropriate for Easton? On a scale of 1 that strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. So the first part of that was the urban growth boundary. And the strongly agree was, got over half of all of the responses. Increased density, so this one is a little more across the board. The right down the middle was the most common, but there's representation in every category on that one. The question or the strategy of building neighborhoods as opposed to subdivisions, there was strong support for that, as is for improving design. Restricting the rate of growth, again, I strongly agree was the most common, but a little more diversity in that answer as well. Then we asked about various factors that are often associated with a community's quality of life. And we asked folks to indicate the degree to which you think each of these factors affects current residents in terms of a decision to potentially locate here. From 1 has absolutely no impact to 5, it's very important. So first such amenity was parks, and 57% of respondents indicated that was very important. The walkability of the town and neighborhoods, that strongly was supported, identified by 68% as very important, and an additional 22% is important. So 90% important are very important. Variety in housing types, it's skewed towards the important side, a little bit more dispersed than the first 2 amenities, but certainly still a strong preference for that. And then another aspect of housing, the affordability of housing. Again, very important, was the most common response. Options for shopping, that people clearly think it's important. Very important was not the most common, but important was in this instance. Still 69% between the 2. Dining options, similar response, almost even split between very important and important. Transportation options, interesting to me. Maybe it shouldn't be so interesting considering we don't have that many transportation options, but the most common response was very important, followed by important. The downtown, almost 2/3 of respondents indicated that was very important. The historic character of our community, again, 60% thinks that's very important. Job opportunities, 58% indicate very important. Then we asked an open-ended question on this survey. We asked people to name one thing that the town should strive to add or improve in order to enhance the quality of life of our existing residents. And there's a strong park theme in the responses. So parks was specifically the most common answer, and then related things like waterfront access, more trails were also mentioned. Some other answers, common answers, included more downtown parking, improvements to Route 50, affordable housing, and improved traffic flows / enforced speed limits. Then we asked, what is the most important asset or resource or amenity for the town to protect or enhance as we contemplate the future of our community? And this was another open-ended question. And some of the most common responses we got was to maintain the small town character, to build on the quality of our downtown, the water or waterfront And that sense of community was mentioned by a number of folks. Then we asked a question. I think this is interesting, and we've asked it a couple of times before in different forums, but we asked, imagine that you have someone coming to visit you that's never been to Easton before. What are 3 places that you would definitely go out of your way to show them? And the most common I'm sorry, I should have updated that, but this is from the previous meeting. At that time, we had 92 responses, and over a third of them specifically mentioned downtown. Also the Avalon, the rail trail, parks, the Art Academy, historic areas generally, the historic hill area specifically, the Tidewater Inn, the courthouse, and Quaker Meeting House all showed up on a number of responses. And a follow-up to that same question was, name 1 place you will go out of your way to avoid showing your guests. Happy to report that none, nothing, or nowhere made the list, but among those who did name something, Route 50, Port Street, shopping centers, and the old Safeway building were mentioned. Then I mentioned the question about the hospital. So we asked, again, in an open-ended nature, we noted that during the cycle of this plan that is on target to be adopted next year, 2023, we think, we don't know, but we think the hospital is likely to move into their new facility on the northern edge of town, resulting in a pretty significant redevelopment opportunity right on the fringe of downtown. So we asked, how should the hospital, and importantly, I think, its associated parking lots be reused? And we got a number of answers, including just a general kind of recommendation for a mixed-use project. Some people mentioned apartments generally, and some actually specified affordable apartments. I think, I didn't note it here, but I think some also indicated senior apartments. A number of people mentioned that they think it's important to maintain some level of medical services at that location. Again, parks shows up as a suggestion. An arts center of some type is mentioned, and as well as some type of academic institution or school. Then we asked a question, so it's one thing to indicate that you will support various programs. So this asks, which of the following programs or projects would you support, but not just support generally, support even if it results in a tax increase? And there was certainly strong support for a waterfront walkway or boardwalk. Also over 60% support for additional passive parks, an expanded trail system, and stream restoration projects. And just short of 60% was increased funding for affordable housing. So again, a strong bent towards expanding our park system in town. So that's the highlights of the survey. If you guys, anybody has a question or a comment that they think of later, that's my contact information. Please send me an email or give me a phone call or stop in the town office. Just real quick before I hand it over again to Paul, I think people are often interested in recently approved projects. So this is a map of some of our recently approved projects. The yellow dots are residential projects. This is the PUD that was recently approved off of Matthewstown Road. This is the apartment project of Elliott Road. It's on the wrong side of the road, annoyingly, but it's right there. And the others are various commercial or industrial projects, most of them industrial, a lot of storage projects recently, either regular warehousing and storage or self-storage and mini warehousing. These two on 50 are the exception. That's our new Royal Farms that you see going up currently, and soon to come next to it is a new Burger King. One that is not on the map, and perhaps but is in this ward, perhaps because it's not all the way to the finish line yet, but it's extremely close, is an exciting redevelopment project, and that's it would be right here, the redevelopment of the Doverbrook apartments. So they're going to redevelop those. They will net out a few additional apartment units, and it looks to me, at least, to be a significant improvement in terms of the appearance of those particular units at an important gateway into downtown. And I will leave with this is the map of this is a blow up of that future growth areas map. The dot is where we are now, approximately. This is the firehouse. And your ward is roughly in this area here. But just for reference and background information, I will have this up. I can go back to other slides if need be, but at this point, I will turn it back over to Mr. Weber for a few interactive questions and discussion.
So you've seen what your neighbors are saying. What's your reaction? Do we have the right population? Most of the people in the survey are very comfortable with 17,101 residents. They're also very comfortable with a growth rate of 1%. How does that fit? We're going to bring the mic so everybody can hear.
Can you hear me? Well, when you say a growth rate of 1%,
There's people online that are listening.
when you mention a growth rate of 1%, we're talking about the growth of what? Housing units or
The
population?
population, but obviously that also equates to housing units.
No,
But yes, residential growth.
growth.
So is 1% the right number? How do you all feel? Forget about the number. How does the growth that you've seen in Easton over the last 10 years, are you comfortable with that? Would you like that same rate of growth to be continued for the next 10 years? Yeah.
There had been a reference to 3% growth that was from the previous 10 years. Is that correct?
Right.
It was the previous 10 years and actually goes back a couple of decades before that. So 20 or 30 years or so, that was fairly predictable that we'd have 3% growth.
Was that mostly by annexation?
So a combination there, we certainly, a lot of it was annexation. So we grew very quickly because we were annexing already developed areas. Other times we would annex undeveloped areas and the growth would follow as those properties develop. You know, often it takes a lot. Well, look at what we have now in Easton Village. That was originally approved 20, 25 years ago, and it's still not done. So it's a slow process. But yes, there's some of that.
Yeah. Well, for myself, I like the 0.7% growth. I mean,
So you're comfortable continuing at the same growth rate?
correct.
Same growth rate.
That we've had the last decade.
Observed growth, the observed growth rate, not the current 1% in the comp plan.
Correct. That's how I understood the comment.
So with the approved PUDs that came through, like the DR Gordon property and then the apartments, and the ones that are potentially on the books off of Oxford Road, what's kind of the baked in growth rate at the moment?
That's a good question, and it's hard to guess that because, like I said, the Easton Village is an example of, and yes, it's a higher end product, so maybe that translates to a slower build out, but I think that was largely a reflection of the economy. You know, that's a project that goes back to 2003 or 2004, and it's, you know, only beginning to near completion now. So it's hard to predict, but yes, that is certainly something we need to take into consideration. we go through, there is a worksheet in the plan that looks at, one of the factors is development that's in the pipeline. And that could be anything from already officially approved to it's been submitted, it's not yet approved, but we think there's a likely chance that if not what's been submitted, something like it is likely to be approved. So that gets factored into our ability to accommodate growth, at least. Doesn't necessarily speak to the rate of growth, but the overall number of units.
Just a quick question, Lynn. The property planned to go between the synagogue and Oxford Road. I've noticed now that property next to it was for sale, now it's under contract. Do you know, is that another development just waiting to happen?
So this is partially speculation, but I would say, I think semi-informed speculation. So my understanding that it is under contract by a party who is looking to do conservation on that property to preserve it.
On Washington Street?
No, this is the property that is
So from Parkway, isn't it?
between the Poplar Hill, the proposed Poplar Hill and Cook's Hope, a large wooded wetland primarily.
Sorry.
So any of the thoughts on growth rate?
I guess that was kind of my question. If you have on the books, if you have on the books 200 units at DR Horton, the apartment complex is, I can't remember how many units that is,
120.
and it's 2.3 persons per household is the estimate. That gives us a rough estimate of, what's that, 1,000 people, right?
Yeah, so we can do that calculation and figure out the number of people that's likely to turn into. The part not so easy to do is how many units are likely to be built per year in each of those various projects. You know, it could go gangbusters and DR Horton might build 40 units next year, or the interest rates could go up, or the economy tank in general, and they might do 12.
Well, that's kind of like a concern. That's on the books, so it's approved. And I don't think our floods expire. So that's always going to be able to be built out. It's going to be there. So as a resident, that makes you say, I don't want it. But we have already 10% growth over that 10-year period, 1% per year. It's kind of baked in. Well, my new comp plan, I want a moratorium on additional growth because we have it already built into what's here now. So that's kind of an important understanding of projecting this and putting that into the comp plan for the future, especially when the residents don't really want any growth, which you just showed us. They kind of like it where it is, it seems.
Keep in mind, that is representative of the people that have taken the survey.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So you all may have a very different opinion about it. So I'm not
I'm just saying
suggesting
we
we should
serve
follow
it.
that.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what is being shown, what people like, and as a resident, kind of concerned about how the growth that's been approved affects the next 10 years decision on what that looks like and what we can add or shouldn't add.
So I want to switch it up just a little bit. So a corollary with growth is the use of land. So a lot of the people who responded in the survey said that they would prefer redevelopment or infill development. So taking land, we don't have that map up any longer, taking land that's already within the confines of the town of Easton, either vacant lots or maybe buildings or areas that they're ripe for redevelopment, and emphasizing development in that location, or the annexation of additional land that's either forested or green land, fields, that's on the periphery of Easton in those growth areas. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, personally, I would like to see it stay the way it is, stay within the confines of the boundaries.
Which boundary are you speaking about? Because when showed you a chart, is there any way that you can show that again?
It's up. It's
Oh,
just
it's up.
difficult to see because we turned the lights up at this point.
So there are already growth areas projected for the future, growth area 1, 2, and 3, different priorities. So one option, when developers come in to build new housing, they can go into one of these locations. They're not currently in the town, they could be annexed. So a lot of people in the survey said, we would prefer to see vacant lots, space, and or the redevelopment of areas within this Milton White area, it's already within the town, versus annexing additional land.
And I think she was agreeing with that. So
Yes, ma'am. Hold on. Sorry, microphone went the wrong way. Yeah,
We'll give it back to him in a moment. We talk about infill, the infill area. The land is supposedly has greater value. And therefore, whatever you build there is going to be more expensive. You can't necessarily put affordable housing on the infill unless you find some way of having price control. And there are a number of parcels within town itself, I think, that could be ripe for development. But the cost would be prohibitive in terms of the results that you derive.
What about multifamily housing on those lots?
If that's what people want, that's what will sell, it's fine.
Thank you.
very good point, though, that I think speaks to at least one of the factors of why development tends to go toward the outer boundaries anyway, because it's easier to develop, it's less expensive to develop.
Well, the survey is talking about walkability. So if you're going outside where it's green, you're not walking. So it makes more sense to do infill so that people supposedly want to walk. You can't walk if you're way out there. We live on Harrison Street. We can walk just about anywhere we want to go. So I see big pieces of land that really could be built in. There's on Brooklyn Street or Dover. There's a lot of places that are walkable. Seems like that would be a sensible place to redevelop.
Okay. So I'm going to slice the apple a little bit differently and play devil's advocate. So if we think that a 1% growth rate each year over the next 10 years is the right growth rate, it may not be possible to accommodate all of those new residents in this Milky White area. Okay, we may have to annex additional land because there may not be enough vacant land, available vacant land through infill or redevelopment to accommodate that growth. So does that change your thinking at all about the rate of growth for our town in the future?
What is the 1%? 1% is how many people?
Wasn't it like a-
My question is, that 0.7 that's been going on for the last 10 years, that's 100 people a year. Approximately. Is that fair?
Oh, please don't make me do math on the fly.
It says 17,000 people,
Would be 107, would be 1%.
170, so about
85 to 100 new housing units per year is a ballpark figure for.
So infill, do we have hundreds of potential infill buildable lots? Because to your point, we probably don't have enough infill to satisfy that.
Well, it also depends upon how you build on those lots. So if you agree to have denser housing and have multi-family units on some of these lots, so you're going to build up and out on the lot, It is possible to reduce costs because you're spreading out the land costs, all the hookup charges, all the development charges over many more units. So it's less expensive to build and more affordable to either purchase or rent. So if you did that, you probably have a better chance of accommodating it, but it may still not be enough.
Guys, I just say that I think there's a ton of underused, within the footprint of Easton now, there's a ton of underused or abandoned industrial or commercial facilities that could be easily repurposed for residential, way much more than 200 houses a year. You saw in the paper, there was the silos that were talking about maybe nice housing out of the silos. It's just a tremendous amount of underused, kind of nice old historic structures that could be repurposed. It doesn't have to be vacant land, green land. It can be facilities. And within Easton, there's tremendous amounts of potential there.
Sorry. Baseline question is, what do we consider affordable housing? My idea of affordable housing is considerably different than many of my neighbors.
You know, I'm going to ask Lynn if we can put the chart up on the website so you all can look at it. I don't have those numbers with me now, but there are very specific income levels based upon median income in the town of Easton that will answer that question. So can we just put that on the website so people can see it?
If I can track it down, yes.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say that that is part of the issue, is identifying what does affordable mean, and it's a wide spectrum. There's everything from highly subsidized to, even folks who make something like 120% of median income fall within the definition of affordable or workforce housing on some level. So identifying which we want to prioritize or target or what kind of programs for each we want to do, it's all part of what, I know it's a major topic town-wide. Our town council has held a couple of work sessions on that topic to try to hone in on it a bit more. I will try to find the chart of which Mr. Weber was speaking, and we can certainly add it to our website, maybe in conjunction with releasing the housing survey.
Now, it's a good question. We get asked at every single meeting, so we'll show you what we have available, but it's very complex.
I'm going to speak up Al Silverstein. Following the market, you look at some subdivisions that Hank Corbin built. Stony Ridge is an example. And having lived there initially when I moved to town, Stony Ridge doesn't have sidewalks, doesn't have boulevards. It was workforce housing in those days. And as we add, as a town, more requirements for lots, what it's going to take, sidewalks, driveways, alleyways, all those other things, those drive costs up. And as far as the infill projects are concerned, one of the problems that we have, we're a 300-year-old town, and our streets are narrow, especially in the downtown area, is individuals come with cars. And so if you do a lot of multi-housing on one lot, you've got to be able to have space for those vehicles, and that's the other challenge. So our town vehicles, school buses can get through, town street sweepers, snow plows, all those other things. Right now, when you look at the real estate, you can hardly find anything under $300,000 for sale. And we're not the only place in the country. It's happening all over the country. And until we as a town put a program together and help fund that program, it's going to become more challenging. Also, maybe working with Habitat for Humanity, who really does a good job, and helping them
locate lots and helping them do some other things might be part of the process.
Sounds like round 4 of the rain set in.
Yeah. Any comments about density? So much thought has been given to increase the density in some areas in the center of Easton, but that's one way to provide more affordable housing. Anybody have any thoughts about increased density of housing? Okay, moving right along. Shopping, been a hot topic in this town for a number of years. Most people in the survey thought that the amount of shopping that we have available is sufficient. Would you agree with that?
I would agree in general, but the impact on the downtown from all the shopping centers has not been what we want. At least I don't want. I want to be able to, so I live in Woodford. I want to be able to walk to a grocery store. I want to be able to walk to a drugstore and not have to drive every place I go. And it's a problem because you go, people out in Coteau or Easton Club East, they're always driving. So it's like their interest in having downtown, vibrant downtown area doesn't seem to be as, I expect it's not as strong as people who live in the Ward 4 area, for example, or Ward 2.
So if I can follow up, a comment we've heard a couple of times at these previous meetings was, a kind of, a feeling of, well, we're kind of okay with the amount of shopping that is available in Easton, but gosh, we'd like something a little nicer or a little more variety. Is that an opinion that you guys share, or do you have a different take on that?
Well, I think we need some more variety in the downtown area. I mean, and I think it should also encompass other African Americans, other minorities. It's not attractive to those individuals because you don't see them walking around going in and out of restaurants downtown. So that's important that we broaden our horizon when it comes to different restaurants and things that are attractive to our downtown area.
I think we really need a grocery store that we can walk to. Safeway is hugely missed. And that building sits there empty. It would be wonderful to have another grocery store where people can walk. There's some people who have no transportation except for the bus. And I think that's much needed.
You're not alone with that thought.
So you suggested we should have Megan's grocery store?
Yes.
So there was a quality of life question asked about building neighborhoods as opposed to subdivisions. And a couple of you have mentioned walkability and the ability not to get in your car, but to be able to walk every place. So what do we do? Because if you look at, I'm not sure where Route 50 is on this map here. Someplace in here.
They're very close, yeah.
So on the west side of 50, we have a tendency to have more what I would call neighborhoods. And on the east side of 50, we have, again, I'm not saying this is disparagingly, but we have more subdivisions. So should we have different standards for housing on the west side versus the east side of the highway? Should the houses look different? Should the neighborhoods look different? Should we take a different stand towards walkability and the use of vehicles, one side of the highway versus the other? What are your thoughts?
I just want to add, it's not just Route 50, it's also the bypass. Most of my ward, half my ward is on the west side of the bypass. And they're all developments. We can walk, but we can't, my other guys in this ward, but you can walk to grocery stores, restaurants, all sorts of things. I can walk to my neighbor's house, or I can walk to Old Golf Course, that's it. I'm not gonna walk on Oxford Road or the bypass.
Right.
So I think you need to consider that one also.
Yeah.
To me, as a relatively newcomer to town, there's a huge problem in this town. It's a wall of China surrounding the town. It's Route 50 and it's 322. You're inside the Beltway or the outside the Beltway. And anything we could do to make it connected between the outside and the inside would be a huge plus. I'm a proponent of the rail trails. I would spend the money for 4 overpasses or underpasses, 4 rail trails connecting so you can walk. And so you just don't have this big wall. It's like, it's just a huge vision within the town. It's something that just should be addressed. Even if spending a lot of money to do it, it'd make it worth it.
So I'm not in this weather. I live on the outside of town here. On Matthewstown Road, outside the Beltway. So I know these frustrations sitting 3 turns of, Route 50 light, trying to just get to downtown Easton, and it's not walkable. The unfortunate thing is we're adding more developments to a corridor that is not walkable. It's not really safe. 3 medevacs a year because of accidents on that road. It's kind of a common theme there. So that's the concern, is that we're developing areas that perhaps shouldn't have development until we address these issues beforehand. It's kind of like, because obviously a developer is going to move probably quicker than the bureaucracy of a county, state, or town can. I work in this, I know that. So we could get 200 houses there. Matthewstown Road's not going to change. 3 to 5 medevacs a year, turn to 5 to 10. You have people get hit on Matthewstown Road walking. There's plenty of people that walk on that road. I drive it every day. People bike on that road every day. So that's kind of a resident. I'm concerned that we're making these decisions without actually addressing the major issues within that infrastructure. Obviously, I love an overpass. I don't think anybody can afford an overpass. They're going to put an overpass up at Chesapeake College. You guys didn't hear that. So that's just kind of my concern, is that you're talking about the housing, the type of housing out there, and maybe, obviously we used to having the flood that we had the alleys as part of the subdivisions. I think that got mixed. So it's kind of like thinking that, we live in Maryland. Do we really need to add in all these subdivisions into Maryland still? Should we be converting farm fields and forests to development in a state that's already overdeveloped? It's kind of, we can't really, we think locally, but we have to think regionally moving into the next 10 years. So as a resident.
So carry your thought a little bit further. So if that is back as a backdrop, where would you go with it? 1%? Where will they be housed?
You already have the housing slated for that in what's been approved for the next 10 years with that 200 homes there and the apartment complex. And then it would be great to have obviously infill in the town, like we've already mentioned, the commercial areas. The big question is could it be affordable to do that? Redevelopment's more expensive. It's smarter to do that. It's a waste of land. You convert a farm field to development. You're moving from housing, from food and fiber to housing. And obviously we're in a region that's already using farmland quicker than anywhere else. So I think we just need to think a much larger scale than County Easton. We live in a state that's bordered by huge areas of development. You go to Sussex County, that's growth in Sussex County is absurd right now. So maybe 1% move to Sussex County because they have enough houses down there to get them in there. A lot of people commute to Easton now because obviously you can't, if you're, minimum wage job in Easton, you're not going to live in Easton generally. You're going to be commuting from Preston, Denton, in those areas. Maybe we help in the infrastructure to get those people to be able to get here easier. if those are the affordable areas, work with other towns to make that infrastructure easier to work in. So.
Any other thoughts about this topic?
One comment. We've been talking about this 1% or 0.7% a year. Is there a way to basically also put a 10-year limit on it? So if you maxed out in 6 years, 10% for.
I'll let you handle that one.
That's a good question. I think the short answer is probably not, without a whole lot of legal backing that would be difficult and expensive to do. Don't take that as a definitive answer, but that's my best guess. I think there'd have to be compelling, we're out of sewer capacity or something like that.
With the 1% then, or 0.7, whatever's chosen, that would still be 0.7 times 7% in each case. So as long as they're living, people get away with more than 0.7 for a few years, then we're just stuck with that more than 0.7 for those years.
Most likely. I mean, I think we could explore some growth management techniques. They are a mixed bag historically. And I think that is probably the reason the current comprehensive plan goes no further than gee, we would prefer to see 1% as opposed to 3%. Because of questions like that, I think 10 years ago, I even posed the question, well, what am I supposed to do when we have approved the permit that is equivalent to 1% growth in July? Does the building department go home? Or do we say for 2011, the math works out that we can have 112 new units. Everybody who would like to have a unit, please submit your application by March and we will judge the best one to, I don't know how that realistically works.
Where are we on sewage capacity?
We have approximately the ability to double the size of the town. And obviously that depends on what kind of development we get, but presuming roughly the same percentage of residential to commercial and industrial, it could be close to double the size of the town.
Hey, Linda, have you ever think of that an adequate public facilities law? Where you take in the things like sewage and transportation and EMS and all that kind of stuff.
So I don't recall that being discussed in great detail. I think that's largely because while we don't have a specific adequate public facilities ordinance, that is pretty much the policy of the town.
Yeah.
That nothing goes forward unless the services are adequate to either at the time or concurrent with the proposed development.
I think the county council was giving some thought to that sort of thing, where you pull it all together and you say, we can approve this, whatever, unless the parkway becomes 4-lane, make it stuff like that.
Right.
So we want to switch gears again. There have been a number of comments about traffic. So we have Route 50, you've got the bypass. We've heard a couple of residents talk about some access points to go from west to east, but there really isn't a good way to do that. So what are your thoughts about traffic? And I'm going to tell you, I've lived all over the United States. Every town has a Route 50. And every town that has a Route 50 rues the day that they allow all this indiscriminate commercial development. And every commercial development has an ingress and egress into the highway. So this is not a problem with just Easton is facing. So what are your thoughts about traffic?
I'll let someone else talk first.
We want you to get it out of your system.
You got the mic, must be you.
Just a comment. Lived here about 25 plus years. And a lot of the traffic we have is through traffic. They have no intention of stopping. And I think it'd be a significant reduction if we had a true bypass. And when I say that, I'm thinking of something like what we find in Salisbury. And I think the perfect place for it, my own opinion, is Black Dog Alley. And you run it down and you come out at a Holmes House Road and let them go on. And it keeps them out of town. That would be significant, I think, in terms of traffic flows.
That's a good opportunity for me to mention, if you didn't see when you came in, we have 3 very short questions that we ask. One of them is on that very topic of what is your vision of the future of Route 50 through Easton. So if you didn't do those exercises as you came in, it probably won't take you more than 2 minutes to do all 3. So we'd appreciate the input.
Thoughts on traffic?
50 is there now, you know, you're not gonna take it away. We do need east-west access, or transferability. And as far as downtown, I think we should close, Goldsboro and parts of Washington to limit it to foot traffic. The people coming in from St. Michael's, making that jog and going out Goldsboro is, you know, it's untenable now. And if we continue to grow, which we probably will, it's not going to get any better. So traffic is the problem, and it really needs some creative, innovative solutions. That probably not from me.
Any other thoughts about traffic? Oh, yeah.
I might get real quick, is a bypass even feasible? I mean, I think there was one proposed in the 70s and that was shot down. Say on that.
State highway has to do with that.
Yeah.
Northern County, that's a whole different.
I mean, it's gonna be, we're gonna have huge issues, obviously, because, you know, lakeside traffic, that fully gets filled out, that's 7,000 more people in our county. That's gonna be adding traffic, not only the traffic, but also to Easton. Well, that's your other 1% down there, I guess. Obviously Black Dog Alley now is kind of, we joke on our side, it's the, you know, the Easton Beltway, we call it, because that's the back way to get around all the traffic that we deal with on our side of town. And I was on it this past Memorial Day, and every single plate on it was out of state, PA, Virginia, DC, because people are using it to bypass Route 50.
Because their app is telling them they can go that way.
People know about it now. And part of that doesn't even have a shoulder on it, which is extremely dangerous if you're trying to, you know, ride a bicycle down it. And then the rest of it is kind of sometimes interesting at intersection and lights there, you know, taking your life into your hands and trying to get through those areas. So obviously Black Dog Alley needs some kind of to be addressed in some regard, even if it isn't a bypass, but it's definitely something that needs to be expanded. I don't know what you do with the lights on 50. I mean, with the 2 developments coming, it already backs up beyond Elliott Road. I don't know if the traffic studies caught that at all. Somehow we still get an 8 rating every time we do the traffic study in Easton. It seems kind of arbitrary to me, comparing stuff from DC and Baltimore for a traffic study. That's why we live here, want good traffic.
Any other thoughts on traffic? Parks. Thought on traffic?
Question on traffic, yeah. the comment, and I know it's true too, well, if we're gonna do something on 50, then that's the state or the county gets involved. How limited are we in Easton? I know a lot of the roads in Easton are county roads, right, in downtown. There's some that are,
There are a few county roads within the town boundary, but there aren't that many.
there aren't that many.
Certainly not downtown.
Okay, so, I mean, Easton would have flexibility there, but there are a lot of places where it seems that we don't really have that much flexibility.
Right, we still have a lot of state roads, and, you know, frankly, the problem roads are all state roads primarily. So it requires working with them. Clearly, if we want something as monumental as, say, a true bypass of Easton, we need to let them know that as early as possible. It needs to be in the comp plan. It's never going to gain any traction unless it's discussed there. That's a tough row to hoe, but you know, that's the predominant thought among Easton citizens, and it ought to at least be raised in the comp plan.
So whenever you see any kind of a survey of the best communities in America to live in, one of the criteria that's used to rate those communities is the number of parks they have and your access to that park, how far you have to go to use it. So what are your thoughts about the park systems here? Are they adequate? Do we need more? Are they close enough to our homes?
Speak for someone who lives downtown, they're fine, they're wonderful. Idlewild Park, and then a Moulton Park, you've got the parks around it. I think it's a wonderful park situation. I don't know how you can make it better for someone living downtown. Someone living outside, that would be a different story.
So I was at a conference this past week, and they were talking, it's a land conservation conference, and they're discussing a township just north of here, just over the Maryland line, that's 30 minutes from Philadelphia. And they have many of these same discussions because obviously there are development pressures in that town. And one of the big things they said is that, you know, we like our green space, our park space. So within that township, what they mandated for new developments was that half of it has to be conserved. 100 acres of land, 50 acres of it has to be turned into passive space, park space. And that's how that town got around this, that people wanted parks, but you need a development. Just put that as part of the deal, you develop a piece of land. And I guess it's White Clay Creek is the area in Pennsylvania there. So you might want to ask them what they did.
Well, isn't our PUD requires 30%?
30% open space. Traditional subdivisions have a requirement for parks. It's 1,200 square feet per unit. Whether that's adequate or not, I don't know, but in comparison to other jurisdictions around here, it's right within the range of what other folks require. The problem is, I think that tends to get you the small neighborhood scale park. And I think what Mr. Weber was referring to is more of the parks on the scale of Idlewild or Moulton. Those typically, we have to acquire those somehow. Those are much larger than what that formula would yield from the traditional subdivision.
Don't forget the John Ford Park. That's another big.
Yes.
Oh, the new one. So the last issue I want to raise, and it's a little amorphous, but maybe you can help me put your arms around it. Every meeting that we've held, people have talked about the character of our community. They all want to maintain the character of our community. What does that mean to you?
Well, in the case of the downtown, we have great history in downtown Easton and in Talbot County. And so maintaining historic houses, we have a historic district commission. We've expanded the historic district a number of years ago so that we can keep that character. much to the chagrin of some people. The requirements for how they maintain their property is a higher requirement. But, you know, I think as you look around and just look at the town downtown and see what's been going on for the last 5 to 6, 7 years, where buildings are being fixed up internally, externally, they still look the same, but they've had a lot of work done to them. I think the character of the courthouse, things like that, really, and my wife always says, this is a beautiful place to take pictures. Sit at the Tidewater and watch the brides being taken across the street in different directions and having their pictures taken. It really has a lot of cachet.
Also, I think people here are more open to the people they're passing on the street. They're friendly, they say hello. They, you know, you always know when there's somebody here from a tourist or whatever, because they pass you and they don't say hello. That, to me, that's the character of Easton.
Other thoughts? Is there anything that you think is a burning issue regarding our growth and development over the next 10 years that we haven't broached yet? Did we miss something?
Really general point, but there's not enough energy in this town. We don't attract the people in the age group from like 20 to 40 that want, you know, nightclubs, that want, and also jobs that would, you know, that they've been put. We basically attract people like us, old people. You know, we don't have a good, vibrant. And I think if we had more people of that age group, things would happen that would make the downtown more vibrant. There'd be more bars, but there'd be more, you know, there'd be more things, and they would have kids, and there'd just be a lot more things going on. So somehow, I don't know how you do that in a comprehensive plan, but that's a real, to me, a flaw of Easton. You just can't attract people. Graduate from high school and they're going to work in Washington or Baltimore. They're not going to work here. That's when you go to college. You're going to go to college and then go. So I don't know what we can do in a comprehensive plan to solve that problem.
I'm just curious, do you think the price of housing has something to do with that? That young people don't want to come here, stay here? No?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I disagree. It does. I'm saying that, okay. That's all right. The burning question that we haven't addressed is Port Street. I thought I read at some point they were talking about 400 new units down around on the other side of the bypass, the Beltway. How does that factor into our growth? It seems a little ambitious to me, and also we're talking about accessible waterfront. We don't have it right now.
So
Speak up.
a lot in that statement. At the current time, there are only 3 or 4 parcels on Easton Point that were identified in the Port Street Easton Point small area plan that the staff and the planning commission and half the community developed, led by Easton Economic Development Corporation. So what that plan describes and the land it was looking at, it consisted largely of the industrial properties and the vacant properties, almost all of which were not in the town of Easton at the time. Only a few of them have now come into the town of Easton, and they couldn't accommodate anything remotely approaching the numbers you're talking about. We have heard that it is likely that more land will be coming into the town soon in annexation, and probably for the purpose of some residential, primarily residential development. So we certainly don't discourage that. The plan has a strong preference for mixed-use development on Easton Point and a publicly accessible waterfront. But it's hard to answer that question now because the land's not in the town. It would first have to be annexed, and we'd have to review plans. So it could be any number of things at this point. We are moving forward to some degree on the waterfront aspect of it. So if you haven't been down that area recently, the town's former public works site is now a really nice waterfront park. We're continuing to improve it. It's where you can go and hop on the bridge that is an extension of the rail trail. And before too long, the trail itself will extend through there. And the town has acquired the property that the business that was formerly Southern States, I think they're called Growmart now. We've acquired that property, and they are in the process of vacating the property, and that is to be turned into yet more park down there.
So where that housing is proposed down there, how many feet above sea level would it be? 8?
So I'm not sure the answer to its elevation, but that is part of the requirements of the zoning, is that at least for the floodplain, that the lowest floor has to be not just above flood level, but 2 or 3 feet above that, I think, was what we wrote into it.
So they'll be getting out of their houses and into water in the future. Sounds like it would be a terrible place to add those houses.
Sounds like Venice. I'm just.
Yeah, they could have a gondola to go up to Easton. I mean, we all know it's not a good idea to put houses next to water with projections of, sea level rise. That adds in additional needs for public services during, major storm events. You put utilities down there, wastewater, they flood out. You flood that creek that's already in poor health. This doesn't sound like thinking to the future. It doesn't sound like a good long-term.
Right,
plan.
so that's part of, if not a large part of the reason that it's one of the main features of that plan is that the waterfront be public access waterfront. So boardwalk, parks, all along the waterfront, pretty much nothing happening within the first 100 feet or so.
Still 8 feet, 200 feet in. Might be 10 feet.
Any other comments for the good of the order? Otherwise, we're going to call it a night, but we'll get one more.
I only learned of this set of questions, two questionnaires coming out from one individual that would be a neighbor of mine. I had not seen it promoted in the newspapers or I Spy or any place else. And I think that may be why your response level is as slow as it is. Now, maybe I'm just not reading the right pages of the paper. I don't know. But
It's
I
actually,
think you need to look at that. Also, I'm curious as to who designed the questionnaire. Was it done in-house or did you have a professional firm?
No, it was in-house. Various town staff folks and planning commission reviewed at least the first one, I think.
and there have been articles in the Star Democrat and the Spy.
There. Okay, sorry.
Maybe not enough, but
Yeah, it's a fair point. We should probably follow up.
it's hard to engage people, but
For sure.
sorry, you had a comment?
Well, I just wanted to ask you guys, how well did we do on the previous 10-year comp plan? How would you rate sticking to the goals and
Right.
to the, you had 46 goals and 100.
Yeah, good question. And so that'll, on some level, that'll be part of what we do as part of this update is look back and say, looking back, how appropriate was that plan and how well did we do at following it? I want to say just off the top of my head, I think we've done pretty well. I can't think of, obviously you can, in something with that many and that variety of recommendations and goals and objectives, one person can look at a project and say, oh, well, it's completely consistent with the comp plan because of these goals and objectives in this chapter. And another person can look at the same project and say, no, it's inconsistent with the plan because of these other goals and objectives. On the whole, I think we've done a good job of sticking to the plan, and I think it's a good plan. We've essentially, it's essentially largely the same plan that we've had since 1996. We've tweaked it 3 times now. We didn't think it was necessary to make drastic changes because we think it lays out a good plan for the future growth of the community.
Thank you.
Any other parting comments? Oh, you got one more.
Sorry, just one question, and it's not about the plan, but the housing that's been built at West and 4th Street, when is that going to be occupied? And is it affordable housing?
Through Public County Affordable Housing.
I know at least one of the units has been rented, but they're taking applications through Talbot County Affordable Housing.
Yeah, it relatively recently had an open house, so that would suggest it's pretty close to being ready.
Thank you all very much for coming out on this stormy night.
Yes,
We
thanks a lot.
appreciate your comments, and please talk to your neighbors, friends, acquaintances, whatever. Ask them to come to the future town-wide meeting that we're going to hold, and also go online and take the surveys. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.